Hi, good afternoon, and very good afternoon. How are you guys? Hope you guys doing great. Okay, in my previous video, when I was showing the unveiling and unboxing and comparison video of 50 f 1.2s from Nikon, I showed you three further lenses, which was Pancake 50 1.8. The, this is the input from that lens. Then 55 f 3.5 macro, which was this lens. Then 55 1.2 AIS lens, which is this lens. And then, of course, I showed you 50 1.2s. So this. So I basically took some sample shots side by side at different apertures, and I'm going to show you the comparison, how the overall look and everything was there. There is a couple of things that I noticed, and it really shows me how why this 50 1.2 is really different, and this lens is, so this is 51.2s. This is really different. So the name over here is basically shows that 50 s mount, 50 s for Z mount, that's 1.2. All right, so that's f2. Okay, then f4, f2.8, then f4, then 5.6. So that's the name. I renamed the file like that. So 5.6, f8, so that's f11, and that's f16. So you can see the background is blurry, uh, or just like that. Okay, so let's start comparing this. First, I want to compare the first two 1.2 lenses at 1.2. So this is the 55 as you can see over here, 55 f 1.2 at 1.2, and this is 50 1.2s. So let's compare them side by side. So on the left hand side, I have 55 1.2 AIS. On the right hand side, 50 1.2 S for the Z mount. Of course, here as you can see, this is a little bigger than this one because this is 55 so that's why it's kind of a zoom. So if you look, and I focused both of them at on my D3S, which is written over here. So when I focused over here, it's clearly see that too much color fringing and softness had by 55 okay, at 1.2, and our 50 1.2s, it's very sharp. It's, you can perfectly, so over here, uh, this is very sharp even at 1.2. This is too soft, and I had to basically do this thing manual because it's the manual focus lens, 55 1.2. So I have to zoom in all the way to on the live view mode, and then I have to do it focus manually. So if you can see over here, it's different. This thing is little bit over here front focus, this thing is little bit over there at the back focus, like it focus perfectly what it's supposed to do. This is a little bit front focus, a little tiny bit, but it's such at the distance of the tripod from which the camera was taken. The both shots were taken from Z5. So, and the output over here, output the background, the color temperature, it's turned out to be different, even though the both are having the same color temperature. But this one is more white, warm. This is kind of a more cool. So that's it. Now I'm going to compare this lens f2. Let's compare it with f2. So this one is f2, and I'm going to compare it 50 uh, Pancake f2. So that's first, and this is going to be 50 Let's compare. So on my left hand side I have 50 Pancake at 1.8 lens at f2, and on my right hand side I have 50 uh, 1.2s for the Z mount at f2. This one, and both are having the same kind of rendition, but not the rendition, is the white balance is different of both lenses. So as you can see, of course, even at f2 this is sharp, but the Pancake is basically keeping up really well. Pancake is famous for its sharpness at f2, and you can see it's keeping up real well. It's an old lens, unlike our 50mm 1.2s, and the overall it's but this is producing a little bit of fringing, which we can expect. It's an old lens, old technology, whereas the 50mm 1.2s, it's clinically, perfect lens, provides sharpness, no color fringing and anything, and it's very much, control. Everything is so much control in 50mm 1.2s, unlike this. Now I'm going to compare this Pancake, and I'm going to replace it with 55mm 1.2 s. So this is I'm going to do, here it is. So on my left hand side I replaced the Pancake lens with 55 1.2 AIS lens at f2, and on my right hand side 50mm 1.2s for the Z mount at f2. So you can check the sharpness. Now at f2 55 1.2s, it's the color fringing is very much gone, and it's very much sharp and detailed, but obviously 50mm 1.2s for the Z mount, it's winning across in every way. The old lenses were kind of a warmer, which you can see the overall. So yes, you can see this is more warm, this is kind of a more cool, but at f2, yep, that looks cool. Now let's jump to f4. So I'm going to see this is that's 2.8. Let's jump to f4. So this is 50mm 1.2s at f4, and I'm going to compare now with macro, because this lens was not compared. And f4 macro, and this is macro. Okay, so on my right hand side I have 50mm 1.2s for Z mount at f4. On my left hand side I have 55mm f3.5 macro lens at f4. So let's go and jump to 100% and see. Okay, oh my god, I was not expecting that. The macro lens is keeping up really well, especially in this part. This is very sharp even at f4. This is the T3S symbol is also very sharp, almost equal. Even the Nikon symbol is equally sharp at f4. Oh, that's a surprise. So if I look at the top over here, this is kind of a sharp, oh sorry, less sharp. This is sharp, but I am expecting this because of the manual focus. I have this 55 3.5 macro lens. It's a manual focus lens, so I'm giving a error, doubt for its manual focus capability. But rest of the thing which is in front over here is equally, almost equally sharp, like 50mm 1.2s at f4, and that's a surprising. Yes, it's very sharp. So both lenses are performing really well. The bokeh of the macro lens is still more blurry, unlike the 50mm 1.2s at f4. So the macro lens is providing kind of a more out of focus rendition at f4, which is, but I look at the background. Look at the background. So look, if this part, this is more blur at f4, which is surprising. This is surprising. And what if I replace this with Pancake? Let's replace it with Pancake. F4, yeah, okay. So now Pancake at F4, Okay, so here it is. On my right hand side I have 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount at f4. On the left hand side I have 50 mm Pancake 1.8 LEDs at f4. Let's compare them side by side. Alright, so Pancake lens is kind of a less sharp than the macro lens at f4. So macro lens is sharp. The out of focus rendition is nearly equal. The front blur is nearly equal. But the macro lens was kind of more sharper than Pancake. And both lens, macro lens and 50 mm 1.2s, it's really good at f4. So if you look like this at f4, it's very hard to see the difference unless you go zoom and then you can see, then you start noticing. So at f4, Pancake is basically having an upper hand on, sorry, the macro lens having an upper hand on Pancake lens at f4. But when it comes to comparing these three lenses at f4, obviously the 50 mm 1.2s is having an upper hand. The second place goes to Pancake lens. The third place goes to, sorry, the second place goes to macro lens, and the third place goes to Pancake lens. Now I have to compare this with one more lens, which is 55 mm 1.2s, and here you go. So on my left hand side I have 55 mm 1.2 AIS lens at f4. On my right hand side is 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount. And let's comparing them side by side. Oh my, this part, this knob is equally as sharp as this. The even D3S symbol is sharp as this. The Nikon symbol is equally sharp. And this knob is not sharp because it's more kind of a front focus, because you can see the mode dial is little out of focus on the 50s over here. 55 AI is a kind of a more sharp, so it's more kind of a front focus. This is I focus on D3S, so I have to manually focus this. So I'm giving the 55 1.2 AIS the error, the margin of the error because of the manual focus. But the overall focus, it's very much competitive, really. So the macro lens and the 55 1.2 AIS both at f4 equally competing with 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount. That's really surprising. Now the bokeh, there was a car over here, so you can see this. The bokeh over here is more kind of it's very hard for me to decide which out of focus rendition is good. But if you see these lines, these patterns over here, it's more visible over here, unlike this in 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount. It's more visible over here in 55 AIS 1.2. So that's the difference. So let's compare now f8. But wait, which f8? Let's compare the Pancake. So Pancake, this is Pancake f8 versus 50 mm 1.2 AIS for, sorry, 50 mm 1.2 for the Z mount. So on my right hand side is 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount. My left hand side is Pancake 1.8, and both are at f8. So f8, as you can see, at f8, obviously this is a clear winner. The 51.8, oh sorry, 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount is clearly a sharp. Like there is no question, because this is soft. This is start getting soft. But it's over here again. It's the focus thing, which because 50 mm that Pancake lens is kind of a focus at the back. But still, even though over here, this part is more sharper than this, because I'm seeing this part, and this part is more sharper over here. So this is more a front focusing. This is kind of a back focusing. But if you look at the out of focus area, is nearly equal. The 50 mm 1.2s more contrasty. This is more meshy, and bokeh over here. This is more kind of a circular. This is more edgy. The pancake provides more edgy, but this is more circular bokeh. Uh, Actually, overall looks both good. So if I look from the top, like overall, both nearly equal. Of course, the white balance, its difference is there because I was in auto white balance, so that's affecting everything. But if I look, it's like this. So let's come replace this pancake lens with macro lens and see how it goes. So this is the macro lens. On my right hand side is 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount. On my left hand side is macro lens 3 by 55 mm f3.5 f8. And of course, the first impression is more magenta. So let's forget about the white balance. At the moment, let's talk about the rendition at f8. Sharp. This is very sharp. Macro lens, this 55 3.5, it's an old lens and it's one hell of a sharp, just like this 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount. That is surprising. That is surprising. Even this at the lower part, even up to here, it's sharp. The out of focus area at f8, both are nearly equal. If I look over here, the this is more blending, this is more mushy, kind of a more mushy, like mussed up. The bokeh circular, this is more edgy, but the sharpness, this is surprising. Now let's replace this macro lens with the 55 1.2 AIS at f8. So my right hand side is 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount. My left hand side is 55 mm 1.2 AIS lens. So both are 1.2 AIS. Sorry, both are 1.2 lens, 50 mm, and both are at f8. So let's see. Okay, so it's very hard to tell right now at f8 which one is sharp because both are good. Both are good. But the front of this 55 1.2 is more in focus, so it means that this was more in front focus than back, which I already said earlier. So yeah, but bokeh and overall, this Produce 55 is always, rendering images more warmer, like unlike the 50 mm 1.2s. Alright, so next I'm going to let's jump into f16 directly. So make it short. So let's start with the pancake. Pancake f16. Let's compare with 50 mm 1.2. So on my right hand side I have 50 mm 1.2s for the Z mount, and on my left hand side I have 50 mm 1.8 pancake lens, and both are at f16. So let's go and compare side by side. Okay, alright, the first thing I am noticing is that f16, this D3s on pancake lens is getting soft, but it's over here, it's sharp. This is more sharp at f16, more sharp. This is equal, but D3 is kind of over here, it's soft. The more tile is sharp enough. D3 is over here, I don't know why it's the PV value and all that function button, all this. The front is more in focus. Yep. this whole area in focus. The bokeh. Alright, this more edgy, this more round. This is more round and this is more edgy. This is more contrasty, 50mm 1.2s for the Z mount. Produce more contrasty background blur, unlike the pancake lens. So let's replace the pancake lens with the macro lens at 16. Alright, again magenta cast. The macro lens is producing magenta casting across the board. So let's see at 100%. This lens is macro lens is sharp now, equal to this, to 50mm 1.2s for the Z mount. The macro lens 55 f 3.5, it's damn sharp. Even the front, it's really crazy that how sharp this old lens it is. The bokeh, again edgy, 1 2 3 4 5 6, so 6 aperture blades. Alright, and this background rendition for both is more contrasty and equal near, but yeah, this is more contrasty. But besides the magenta casting, it's it's nearly equal, like 50mm 1.2s. So the macro lens is nearly equal, like 50mm 1.2s for the Z mount. So let's replace it with 55 1.2 AIS and 16mm. Here you go. So on the right hand side, I have 50mm f1.2s. Alright. For the Z mount, on my left hand side, I have 55mm 1.2 AIS lens. And it is sharp, but not as sharp like macro lens at f16. Macro lens was more sharper than this 55mm 1.2. It's good. It's sharp enough, but obviously we can clearly see that 55 1.2 is more sharp than this 50mm. The background, the rendition is more meshy. This is more contrasty. This is kind of a less contrasty. But it's producing warmer colors, warmer tones. It's producing more cooler tones. And so, yep, here it is. So this is the side-by-side comparison of the four lenses. And as you can see that the 50mm 1.2 AIS is producing much more better result, and it's really good, and I really like this. I really like the overall output from this lens. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in future and some new content. Till then, take care. Bye.